this wasn't just a courtroom stumble, this was a public unmasking. This was the exact second a royal narrative cracked, live, under oath, with nowhere to run. They say the truth doesn't scream, it waits. And today, in a London courtroom thick with tension and whispered history, the truth didn't just arrive, it hit hard. Because the moment the evidence landed, the kind that doesn't argue, doesn't negotiate, doesn't soften, Prince Harry's body gave out before his story could catch up. Let's rewind, because what unfolded inside that courtroom wasn't just legal procedure. It was years of resentment, memory, and reputation colliding in real time. Prince Harry walked into court carrying more than files and legal briefs. He walked in carrying a decade-long public identity, the wounded prince, the hunted son, the man who claimed the British press never treated him as anything but prey. But today, the courtroom wasn't interested in feelings. It wanted facts, dates, names, receipts. The case itself? Harry versus Associated Newspapers Limited, the publisher behind the Daily Mail. Harry says they hacked, spied, trespassed, stole his privacy during the early 2000s. He says the stories written about him could only have come from illegal means. That's the claim. That's the hill. But then the other side stood up. Cool, measured, surgical, and they didn't attack Harry with insults. They attacked him with his own past. The courtroom leaned in when the barrister began dismantling one specific allegation, a 2004 article about a woman visiting Harry at Sandhurst Military Academy. Harry's position was firm. No one could have known that unless someone hacked a phone or intercepted messages. But the defense calmly introduced another possibility. A former friend. Someone who was there. Someone who had direct knowledge. Someone who had fallen out with Harry shortly before that article appeared. Suddenly, the story wasn't about shadowy hackers anymore. It was about human betrayal, and that alone rattled the room. But that wasn't the blow. That was just the warm-up. Because then came the evidence no one expected, and certainly not Harry. A detailed account, backed by a contemporaneous email, not a rumor, not hearsay, an interaction, between Prince Harry and a Daily Mail journalist, Katie Nicholl. The document described a night in the mid-2000s at the Kensington Roof Gardens, a party, a social invite. Harry himself, not an aide, not a fixer, personally inviting the journalist to join him and his friends. She came, she mingled, she stayed in contact, friendly, casual, normal. Everything Harry's legal narrative insists never existed. Because here's the thing, Harry's entire case leans on one central truth he's repeated for years, that his relationship with the British press was always hostile, always predatory, always dangerous. But this evidence didn't show fear, it showed comfort. And comfort is lethal in a courtroom built on victimhood. As the barrister read the details into the record, observers noticed something shift. Harry's color drained, his posture stiffened, his breathing changed. This wasn't outrage, this wasn't defiance. This was panic. Witnesses say he began to sway, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Before anyone could react, he slumped forward. Security moved, lawyers reached. Someone caught him before he hit the floor. The courtroom froze. Proceedings stopped immediately. Curtains were drawn. Paramedics were called. For 10 long minutes, the room buzzed with whispers and disbelief. Harry was conscious but disoriented. Water was given. Medical checks followed. And just like that, the hearing was adjourned. Not because the law demanded it, but because the body had spoken when the words could no longer hold. Outside the courtroom, shockwaves rippled fast. This wasn't just about health. This was symbolism, because the collapse didn't happen during cross-examination. It didn't happen under attack. It happened the moment his narrative was contradicted. Publicly, documented, undeniable. A palace source tried to soften the moment. Stress, heat, pressure. But legal analysts weren't buying coincidence. They saw timing. They saw impact. They saw a man confronted with proof that didn't just poke holes, it threatened to rewrite the story he's told the world. One veteran royal commentator put it bluntly, this wasn't a legal stumble, it was a psychological earthquake. Because if Harry wasn't always hunted, if he wasn't always hostile to the press, then what else had been reshaped by memory? Associated Newspapers released a statement afterward, calm, almost polite. They stood by their evidence, wished him a swift recovery. Harry's team said little, no denial, no explanation, just that he was resting and focused on justice. But here's the part no statement can erase. This case is no longer just about phone hacking. It's about credibility. It's about delay, why these claims surfaced so many years later. It's about detail, or the lack of it. And now it's about contradiction. Judges have already warned Harry and other claimants that emotion won't replace evidence. And today, evidence didn't just speak, it collapsed someone under its weight. Medical experts say stress can do that, especially when a deeply held self-story is challenged by hard facts. And for Harry, that self-story has been the foundation of everything. His break from royal life, his media crusade, his public rebranding. Tomorrow, the court will reconvene. Whether Harry returns is unclear, but one thing is certain, this battle has changed. Because now, the question isn't just what the press did to Harry, it's whether Harry told the whole truth about what actually happened. And now, the aftermath. Because once the curtains were drawn back and the paramedics wheeled away, the real damage had already been done. Not to Prince Harry's body, but to the case he walked in believing was unshakable. When court adjourned, lawyers didn't rush to comfort him. They rushed to recalculate. Because this wasn't just an embarrassing moment, this was a legal turning point. The kind that quietly flips power without anyone needing to announce it. Inside legal circles, whispers started immediately. This changes everything. Why? Because the defense didn't just poke a hole, they exposed a pattern. The Katie Nicholl evidence wasn't random, it was deliberate. A precision strike aimed straight at Harry's credibility, the one thing his entire lawsuit depends on. Because let's be brutally honest here, Harry's case has never been built on forensic proof. No hacked voicemail recordings, no invoices from private investigators, no smoking gun emails ordering surveillance. What he brought instead was memory, pain, belief. And courts don't rule on belief. Judges have already flagged the same problem again and again. The timelines don't line up. The allegations are vague. The delays are extreme. Many of the supposed acts happened more than a decade ago. Yet Harry waited. Years passed. Evidence faded. Witnesses disappeared. And every delay strengthens the defense's argument that this isn't about justice. It's about narrative control. That argument is now louder than ever. Because the moment Harry fainted wasn't just physical collapse, it symbolized something far worse, the collapse of consistency. The defense's position is simple and devastating. If Harry mischaracterized a friendly relationship as predatory, what else is he reframed to fit the story? And courts care deeply about that. Credibility isn't optional, it's currency. Lose it, and everything else devalues instantly. One legal analyst described it as watching a case bleed out without a single dramatic ruling. Behind the scenes, Harry's legal team is now cornered. Their original strategy relied on emotional volume, overwhelm the court with personal trauma, media intrusion, and moral outrage. But that strategy only works if the narrative stays intact, and today, it cracked in public. Even worse, this case doesn't exist in isolation. Harry is fighting on multiple fronts: Mirror Group, other publishers, overlapping claims. Every skeptical comment from one judge echoes into another courtroom. Every inconsistency compounds. This is a legal echo chamber, and right now, it's amplifying doubt. Financially, the pressure is suffocating. Pre-trial losses already mean Harry could owe hundreds of thousands in legal costs. A full trial? Millions. And unlike public sympathy, legal bills don't care about intentions. Observers say the collapse revealed something raw, a man watching the story he's lived by for years being dissected under fluorescent lights. No audience applause, no sympathetic edits, just facts. Cold, precise, unforgiving. And here's the brutal irony. Harry entered this fight believing he was David versus Goliath, a lone prince standing against ruthless tabloids. But Goliath didn't show up with insults. He showed up with archives, emails, dates, names, and when David reached for his stone, it turned to dust. Legal insiders now believe Harry's team may pivot fast, seeking a quiet settlement, narrowing claims, or preparing for a controlled defeat. Because a full loss would be catastrophic, not just legally, reputationally. It would cement a new narrative, not of a man hunted by lies, but of a man who weaponized trauma beyond what the facts could carry. That's the danger now. Once a court questions your truthfulness, the press doesn't need to invent anything anymore. They just quote the record. And the record is starting to look unforgiving. When the court reconvenes, every movement Harry makes will be watched, not for drama, but for stability. Because the spectacle already happened. A prince didn't fall because of accusation. He fell because evidence walked into the room and refused to blink. And in that moment, when his body gave out before the lie could hold, the world saw something no statement can erase. A story collapsing under its own contradictions. Its own contradictions. Its own contradictions.